my loyal 3, my advanced students. Thank you for coming in and coming aboard. Okay, so let's get started for the week. I think everyone here is going to like the subject for today too. We're going to be talking about beauty. My goodness. So, let's see if I can turn off this notification. Okay, I ask you guys if you can tell me in the chat box below, how can beauty be used as a tool in art? So how do artists use beauty? To appeal to the eye, right? It definitely draws the viewer in. Does anyone else have an idea? That's a really good one. That's a good one, Sinai. To attract people to the art, right? Literally reeling them in. Inspiration. Wonderful. Sparks. All right, it sparks a feeling. Sparks feelings for sure. Do you guys think beauty is used in realms other than art? You can give me a check for yes, X for no. Right. When we start to look at beauty as a tool in itself, it kind of reframes how we see artwork and sometimes even other people, especially in our image-saturated society, in which I would say teaching in high school now, the average student, especially female student, knows more about makeup and by their 9th grade than I ever did by like the age of 25. And that's totally because we have this information culture that's shared. It's really easy just to look up how to look a certain way. Okay, so speaking of beauty, I want you guys to ask some questions about the selected artwork that we're looking at today. You can type on the board or in the chat box, but any old question. You don't have any questions tonight? Well, maybe. Yes, this is Egyptian art. It looks weird though for Egyptian art, right? It's from a period called the Amarna period, Amarna, in which everything like completely changed what it's been doing, just for really one person's lifespan. Good focus. Does it look obviously Egyptian to you guys? Most people can tell by some of the base details here around the eyes and such. Yeah. Do you have any other questions about this piece? It is famous around the world. And she also has a famous story. Are you guys ready to get to the story? Give me a check if you're ready to move on for story time right now. For this tea, yeah. Okay, so we all know here that we're looking at an Egyptian piece. Put the video on for this tea. Today it is coffee, and I found I can't have normal dairy milk because I just don't digest it right. And I found an almond creamer with like a butterscotch flavor in it, which is super, super yummy. But so we're looking at this piece here. This is actually called the, ignore that up there. I'm going to cross that out. We're looking at something called the Bust of Nefertiti. And I'll type it up here for you. Has anyone ever seen this piece before? I can clear out the checks. Give me a check if you've seen this before. What? Video. Well, not quite. Don't know where my video screen just went. Computer's on the fritz today. Okay, so we're looking here at the bust of Nefertiti. And there we go. There I am. Okay, the bust of Nefertiti. And this woman is famous. Where can you find it? You can actually find it in a Berlin museum today. It is not in current Egypt anymore. We've talked a little bit about the politics of this in the past. Why are so many works that are Egyptian not in Egypt? There's lots of reasons. But can you give me a guess? It's probably right. Why would they not let this work stay in Egypt? There's multiple factors here. Theft? Ooh, right. So that's actually a really good point to bring up, Madison. There's like two sides here to that coin. A, we talk about something in art called appropriations a lot, and is something ethically taken from a community. And in the early days of archaeology, and I'm thinking about, when I say early days, I'm talking about like up to like the 1930s and 40s when Indiana Jones was based. That era of archaeology, there was a lot of illegal stuff going on in the archaeology trade, and there still is today. There's still a lot of issues with it. There's also a lot of issues with political turmoil, right? So Germany is not necessarily doing any better than Egypt, but refuses to give it back because of they claim that the political turmoil could cause destruction to the artwork, meaning that if there's a bombing that goes off in a museum area, it could be shattered or stolen from there. So that's a sticky situation that we're all in. We have to decide who has the rights to the work. And then you hear about cultures with a political majority at the moment, like Germany, who can claim to hold on because they say they are more stable, even though, of course, Egypt would like to have their own work back, as this is truly a work of Egyptian heritage. This woman is famous because she is the mother of which famous Egyptian king? Everyone knows his name. Can you type in the chat box? He's a very young king, and his nickname is very short. Thinks of nine, might know who they are. I'll give you his nickname is only 3 letters long. King. I think he's like in his 3rd grade SOL, so you might have to reach back into like your old memory there. Does anyone know? Tut, you're right, you got it. King Tut. This is the mother of King Tut. Now, the sole reason why King Tut was ever considered famous is because he had the most unlooted burial site, meaning that there were much greater and wealthier kings and pharaohs before him, but most of their sites had been robbed, so by the time the archaeologists unearthed them and went into the tombs, the majority of the gold and treasures left behind were gone and stolen and sold over time. But King Tut's tomb was preserved because they hid it. It wasn't in a traditional pyramid. It was like literally hidden in the rocks, in the cliff sides. But this statue, the bust of Nefertiti, never made it to Nefertiti's tomb. Now at this time, pyramids and tomb structures took so long to build that artists would actually work in the structure while it was being built, if that makes sense. They would set up a workshop inside, so as soon as something was made, they can move it to the proper area. It didn't have to be shipped from long routes. It was made on site. And so this artist was actually found in the artist's workshop before it was never put in its ceremonial space, but it was still left sitting there and still quite preserved. It was like airtight chamber. So over, I think, almost 3,000 years, this is the amount of wear and tear you see on it. We really only just see a some chipped ears, a missing eye inlay that probably fell out. It's normally just a stone that's sitting in there. But really, other than that, she's incredibly well preserved. And from this piece, we can figure out so much about the culture. Now, Nefertiti, can anyone guess what her name means? You know, all the famous ancient peoples, their name always meant something. Technically, everyone's name kind of means something, at least the origin of their name. But Nefertiti means, get this, beauty has arrived. So it's a pretty, she was a very gorgeous woman. Yes, she was actually considered a living goddess. So if the pharaoh was considered the part god or the demigod, thus his wife or his wives were always considered in some form or fashion like the goddess in form. So Nefertiti meant beauty has arrived, which is an awesome name. And like a lot of names, people can actually be born with one name and it change over time, which is something interesting. So it's like, you see this a lot actually in like the Catholic Church today, for example. In each stage you move in your faith, you get a new name, which means you can have one name legally, and then, but like culturally, by your religion, you can have lots of names that you like added on throughout your life. In the same way, people often would take a new name when they went into a new and a higher role in the ancient world. So I don't think we know what her birth name would have been. That's often not recorded. But certainly by her death, she was still considered beautiful, even in her age. So about how old would you put this statue at? What does she look like if you were to give this woman an age, looking at this piece? Yeah, late 30s, 40s. You know, remembering that life was harder back then, even if you were living in the poshest level of society, life was still harder. So we're probably going to put her in her late 30s, considering that most women, if they were having kids at this time, would start bearing their first children around 14, 16, shortly after their first marriages, or probably for women, their only marriages. Once again, sticky situation in the history here. So at this point, if you've survived, you know, she's at the age where her son is now getting married, so late 30s and such. Yeah, culture's changed a lot, right? Over time. So we're looking at probably mid to late 30s, right? She still looks somewhat young, though. But what are the signs of age that you see in her face? Something that definitely goes, she's not 20. Oh, her cheeks, the sagging neck, yeah, the neck wrinkles, where it starts to cave in right here. Like, remember, when you guys are young, you have collagen, naturally produced collagen in your face that keeps it bouncy and light. And then as we get older, the collagen actually literally starts to dissolve away, and these areas start to sink down. You can actually see how you're going to look when you're old. You're just doing this in the mirror. And then for a lot of people, our lips get tinier. You know, basically you're better off if you have the fuller lips when you're younger, because that means that even as they get tinier when they're older, they'll still probably like medium size. But my grandmother has lips like, they're this big now. She has to use like a lip liner pencil and actually draw on larger lips. It's really funny. Yeah, so there's signs of aging here. Now my question to you guys is, She could tell the artist to create her image in any way she likes. She knows she's beautiful. Everyone knows she's beautiful. I mean, that's why they gave her this name. But why do you think that she wanted to show her age? I guess in the same way for you guys, why would you want to look older? Sure, there's more than just looks, totally, right? There's definitely another power element here too. Yes, and to show authority too, right. So we see this in our own culture today, age equaling wisdom, which I think we all know on a certain level isn't completely true. It's actually experience that equals wisdom, but you're more likely to gain more experiences over time. But some people live a really intense early life that literally makes them wiser when they're at a younger point. But we have this old adage of age equals wisdom. So even though she's beautiful and is prized for her beauty, she wants still to have authority, even in death. She wants to be taken seriously. And I think that's a huge power symbol here, right? So that's a little story about Nefertiti. There's lots more going on in her life. Her husband was literally a rebel pharaoh, changed the whole way that the religion and culture was run for his lifetime, and then they reverted back. He even changed the capital city. So, and before this piece, most ancient Egyptians wanted to be depicted as the standard youngish-looking age. Even if they died at the age of 50, they wanted the images in their tomb to look like they were like 25. So this was in itself quite radical. She looks realistic. This looks like a real woman. She's actually real proportions too. If you see this piece in person, they have it standing so that it's like head height, so that she'll line up with you, and her face and her head is almost the same size as ours. And then she has her giant headdress under here, and really, really delicate, fragile neck. But there is something though before we move on that's a little bit up with this neck. Can you anyone tell me what's wrong with the neck? It's kind of hard to see from this angle. It's too long. Totally, right. This is actually a sculptural adaptation. The reality is that in order to make, so our necks are in fact like tree trunks. When most students start drawing figures, they always put like a stick neck right there. But we have to have a pretty strong neck to hold up this huge head and give it all the flexibility that it needs. But that isn't the same mechanics that exist in sculpture. Now this piece is rock hard. It's literally carved limestone that's been coated in plaster, and in that plaster they've mixed these skin tone sort of colored paints. But the neck itself is had to be made longer so that it could support the head and that headdress, because this is one solid piece of rock underneath. So that headdress is really heavy. So they've extended the neck literally as like an engineering thing, so it's almost like a third as long as it should be. So imagine coming down a little bit more right there. They extended the neck to actually help with the balance of the whole piece. So the artist actually played around with proportions even more. And then in ancient Egypt, proportions were an incredibly important thing. Just as in ancient Greece, you didn't deviate from them. So once again, she had rebel artists aboard. to bring it to some current things that we talk about in art now. Technically, one of these is a photograph, and the other is considered a photo illustration. So which one's the photograph, the left or the right? Left, right. Left, correct. Let me turn off this video. I don't want you to see my face anymore. Okay. Yes, the left one is definitely the photo. Technically now, when you are looking at a magazine that has been processed a lot, so airbrushed out, edited, changed, so technically the image has to be called a photo illustration because it's so far from the original. And that's a good term that we're getting into now. So these pictures were taken the same year in this actress's life. One was a straight-up photo of her at an award ceremony. In the right was the image in the magazine that she was interviewed for this award ceremony. My question to you guys, our life expectancy is just going to, has increased a lot, right? So when your grandparents were your age, the average life expectancy was like 70s and 80s. But now we have a lot of people going into 90s, 100s, and past 100, right? So there's a lot of life to live. And my question is, as our life expectancy increases, should we still appreciate airbrushing? Is this still something that we should be seeing? Should we allow people to look older? Now, I just want to hear your thoughts on this, if you can type it in the chat box. And this is really a cultural question, right? Do you think, Grayson thinks that we should still allow airbrushing as we get older? Can you tell me why, Grayson? There's no wrong answer. Madison says yes. Yep. Can you guys tell me a little bit why you think that we should still be airbrushing people? You mean no. Okay. Grayson, can you tell me why? Once again, there's no wrong answer here. This is just an opinion question. Yeah, she's trying to look younger, for sure, in this image. She almost looks 30 years younger. So when you airbrush on the right side, it's when you smooth out all the wrinkles. Yeah, so Grayson thinks that we should have the cultural appreciation of showing your age. You know, this is a woman that none of us, I think, know in person, I think. If you could imagine your grandmother going through this, feeling like she wants to look younger, so getting all her pictures airbrushed. It's kind of like a Snapchat filter too, right? Like imagine holding up a Snapchat filter to your grandmother and it smooths out all the wrinkles and it makes the eyes real big and shiny. So you think we shouldn't hide? Yeah. And it's getting even trickier now. Like as I said earlier with makeup, now that 14-year-olds and 25-year-olds have the same makeup chips, it's really difficult when all the makeup is on to tell who's what age, right? In the same way we have with images now too. Yeah, so people always want to look younger, is kind of what Madison, that's what I interpreted of what you're saying. A flash to the past. Do you guys think that the magazine industry should encourage airbrushing in photo illustration, or do you think that they should try and be honest? Yeah, totally. They do this in movies with CGI. There's a lot of movies. What was it? One movie, I think it was the movie in which Paul Walker had passed away. And they CG'd him in like most of the half of the movie. It can be a little weird. You know, the end of I think it was Star Wars Rogue One. Yeah, I just thought of that too. Like completely CGI face. Luckily it was a smaller segment there with Carrie Fisher, so it didn't get creepy like some movies will. I think it was the Tron remake, for example, which they CG'd Jeff Bridges' face. Almost, yeah, Marvel movies are almost completely CG'd, especially when they have a costume on. It's almost at the point where they put their face on top of an entire animated scene. Right? You know, and we're getting into these elements of fantasy that we're allowed to. Do you think, like, the image to the right here, she's almost in a fantasy, remembering what she's like when she's young? Yeah, totally. I think one of the last Terminator movies in which they had Arnold Schwarzenegger come back in, he's almost completely CGI'd in. Like he did not want to appear as his older self too. You know, and CGI and Photoshop kind of give us a little bit of flexibility in our life. It makes us, I think, in some ways less reliant on getting plastic surgery to look younger because you can just get a Photoshop job done to look younger. Because if all you really want to do is look younger in images, you can just find someone to airbrush that out. So in some ways it can deter, but we also have probably the highest amount of plastic surgery than ever before in our world right now. It's pretty intense. Okay, so this is a little bit of an image hunt for you guys. You should have the ability to do this. I want you guys to upload an image of someone that you think of who uses their looks for power. So how are they using their beauty? And this can be male, female, but their beauty and their looks give them power. Or maybe it's not necessarily beauty. Maybe it could be the age side too. But I'll give you guys a couple minutes to find an image and upload and share with us. How do you do that? I believe someone did it the other day. Do you guys see the load content button at the top right of the screen, Graceland? If you find an image in Google, download it to your desktop, you literally hit load content, and it lets you put an image in there. Yeah, perfect. So now I got it. Ooh. Ashley Graham. I would say so. And then you think how much the Kardashians have impacted how we do makeup now with the contouring everywhere that we see. Yeah, you see almost every female artist is doing that now. It's really hard to find someone who doesn't have the photo of the intense contouring. And we have a tendency in fashion to think like something's around forever. But this is actually a pretty new thing. It's only been done in the last few years, this heavy. I remember in the 90s and like the early 2000s, everyone was doing like highlighted cheeks and blush, but none of this dramatic cheekbone work here. Yeah, Ashley Graham, she definitely looks like she's using her beauty for power. And just because, yeah, Kylie Jenner, just because you're using your beauty for power doesn't necessarily mean it's sinister, right? You can use your power for good. And advocate for other people using that attention or other causes, but we can look at it in the abstract sense. Other people who use their beauty for power. Oh, yeah, classic image up here that just came out by Madison. And she's one too, Kylie Jenner, that she's a hard person to tell her age. Like you have to look it up. Because she could be, because of the makeup and the hair and the styling, You know, she could be anywhere in the range from like 17 to 27. What about people who use their age for power? And you can type it in the chat box at this point if you don't want to put in the image. So, you know, they're using their age and their looks to gain power in our world. The look of their age. Can you think of anyone who uses their age for power? You have no idea? You know, maybe we're not thinking so much in the entertainment business. Ooh, Oprah. Yeah. Oprah is also a tricky one too, right? She has been old for a long time, but you have no idea what age she actually is. She, in her magazine, like, there's a lot of photo illustrations happening there, but she's probably going to outlive us all. I think she's going to make it to 200. So maybe think in terms of our political structure in the U.S. Angela Bassett. Like, is anyone in our political structure using age for power? Angelina Jolie, also Mysterious Beauty. I definitely agree with that. So I'm going to put a word into here, and I want you guys to think, I'm going to type it in the chat box. I want you guys to guess what it means. This is actually a Latin word, and I want you guys to guess what it means in English. Any guesses? I learned this in my... Right, so now that's our current meaning for sure. But I'll give you this right here. The same root of the word senator is also in the word senile. So what does that root, S-E-N, mean? Senator, senile, what do they both have in common? They're both crazy. Yeah, well, they're also both old. So the S-E-N in Latin means old. And the word senator in Latin translates to old man. So literally the first senators in the Roman political system literally meant a council of old men. Like senior, totally. Old, aged, right? So, and our political system is still inspired by the early democratic forms. So a council of old men, or senators, still exists today, but we've had to obviously diversify and then keep diversifying as our culture changes. So according to our laws, do you have to be fairly old to be a senator? It's different versus the president. The president does have an age assigned to it too. So I guess you can give me a check for yes, X for no. Do you have to be fairly old to be a senator today? By our terms, probably not that old, but I believe the starting age has to be either 25 or 35. So you can't be a 17-year-old senator, for example. Now I'm going to clear out the box here. Do you have to be fairly old to be a president? Check yes or X no. So I believe, if I'm not mixing it up, and I might be, the age minimum is 45 for a president. So you still can't be that young. They have certain age limits required, which doesn't really even seem necessary now. Maybe it made sense in our colonial era, but the justification for the age limit now doesn't make complete sense, right? Because our culture has changed so much over the course of our history. You know, maybe I understand not hiring a 17-year-old president, but we still have this push where you have to be a certain age to have a certain amount of power, which goes right into the art world. We're going to talk a little bit about ageism in the art world. So what is ageism? Does anyone know what that means? You can probably guess. So, you know, I can also say, like, age judging, totally, right. This is being judged inappropriately for your age. And we have these power dynamics all the time that we have to deal with, no matter what age we are. For example, as a teacher, even though I have been, you know, teaching for many years, I still face ageism as well, where because I look young, people treat me as if I'm 19, and I have to reaffirm, no, this is inappropriate. This is actually ageist. I have all these years under my belt and deserve the same respect as any other teacher. And you guys have to deal with this in certain ways as well too. For example, people telling you the common phrases, you don't know, you haven't lived long enough, you're too young, right? You're too young to know what you want. Yeah, so you can really resonate there. You know, in the same way in the tech industry, for example, so if you want to work for Google or something like that, a lot of people are aging out. Like when I say age out, I mean like past the age of 25 or 26, they're starting to say you're too old for the business, right? So meaning that you could have been training in graphic design, computer software, and have a lot of stuff under your belt. But because of your age, they're dealing with the industry saying you cannot work here because you're not literally hip or young enough, which is ageist and totally worthy of suing over. You know, my father was actually let go from his job the other year, and luckily he's doing very well as a consultant and, you know, good riddance. But he was let go because he had aged out of the system as well. And it was his corporation. And, you know, there's lots of politics in there. You can technically sue for ageism as well, but it does depend on the situation. But it exists in our art world, and I have here 2 images for you guys of people in very different decades of their life. And the art world is kind of definitely divided in terms of age. You can see here how the left modernist artist right here has her design layout, and the right guy is really much more, he even looks hip, right, in the image. I guess hip is the best way, but I'm sure there's a trendier word we can use to describe him. He looks younger, he's playing up that role too. So the huge ageism in the art world exists in the industry, such as galleries. So which gallery will show which work really depends on what ages the gallery likes to see and who they're attracting in as their viewers. And also, there's a big divide with money and grant funding. So there are actually a lot of scholarships and grants out there for young, upcoming artists. And they tend to max out at ages at the age of 25. So say you're 40 and decide to go into art and you're really getting into it, you're kicking it off, like you're getting a lot of attention and notice, and you want to apply for all these grants and scholarships, but the only thing that's keeping you from getting accepted is your age. So, my question here is it right? Like, is the age divide good, and when is it good? And is the age divide bad, and when is it bad? So it's a little bit of a debate here. Is it ever okay to have this age delineation? Or is it good? Does it benefit someone somehow? No. Okay, can you guys elaborate on your thoughts a little bit? You shouldn't judge anyone for their age, right? So what if, like, for example, what if you're like a 12-year-old prodigy in painting and you can't apply for any scholarship because you're not even 17 yet? How the gallery world also accepts work now has changed a lot too, based on technology and social media. Because you don't know what they're capable of. Right. Do you think we should always judge the artwork based on the grant or the artist? That's a good question. Exactly. Yeah. Right. They can add their own spark to the modern style. I personally think it's really interesting to go to a gallery show or a museum exhibit and see works of very old people next to very young people and what they have in common, different life experiences. Once again, that's that question of just because I'm older, it doesn't mean that I have more experience than you. You could have lived a very different life than me and gained more experience. And that happens a lot. There's one of my favorite artists, I think, Carol Walker, was like an amazing young artist. I think she kicked it off at the age of 19. Her work was getting exhibited in huge galleries around the world. And then by the age of 24, she had a doctorate in art and was teaching at high-level universities, where she said every one of her students was older than her. So she had to deal with ageism in the industry and how to seem more mature than she innately was. She essentially had to push herself to grow up so that she could teach and work with this community. But she said that in some ways you lose your youth in that as well. Okay. So going back to the bust of Nefertiti, I know it's been a while since we talked about her. I'm going to just come back to the slide real quick so you can see her. Boop. The bust of Nefertiti. Can you guys help us jog our memory? Someone described the style and someone described the process. So the style, what does it kind of look like? Is it realistic? Is it abstract? Is it natural? Is it really fake looking? And someone else described the process. If you can remember what this was made out of. I should have the tools. Yeah, I agree with that. She definitely looks pretty realistic. You feel like you could actually see who she was in her real life. There's a lot of paintings that consider themselves realistic that are not compared to this statue. Yeah, it's really realistic. She's not very damaged for 3,000 years old. And it's made from limestone. It's been painted on, essentially. Good job, guys. Solid teamwork. Give me a check if you think we're good to move on. Coolly. Next slide. Alright, we're going to do a quick compare and contrast here. So, this week versus last week. And once again, these can be really short and to the point. What's different about them? What's similar? I'm going to claim one similarity here I got. Both have people with power. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, for this one, almost easier to come up with a similarity. Both have meanings, right? But there's some obvious differences too, right? Can anyone point out some differences for me?
That should be the easy part.
Sometimes it's too easy. Let's see. Yeah, she believed she was beautiful too. What about the steel maybe? Yeah, connected to a big stone. Right. That's a good point right here. Who put this one? Graceland, you made a good contrast there. The sculpture to the left, the bust of Nefertiti, in sculpture we call it an in-the-round sculpture, meaning that you can walk all the way around it and it's a complete piece. They thought about the front and the back. Versus the stele of Hammurabi, we actually call a relief sculpture. I know, it's like, what a relief, but a relief sculpture is half the work. It means it has a flat back and it's coming out to you. So one is definitely normally harder than the other to create. Eye for an eye, right? Yeah, the right one's really all about law and order and telling you what to do, versus the left one is like, you should do what she says because she has enraptured you. All right. So give me a check if we're good to go to the next slide. And we're good to go. Let's see here. There we go. We'll move to this one actually, because we are doing so good on time. How does this work impact you? There's only 3 of y'all here, so it'd be nice to have 3 boxes written in. So maybe you can think about how to incorporating beauty in your own work. Is that what impact you? You can think about your own life outside of art as well. The concept of ageism, making yourself look older versus accepting who you are. And ageism is always like a two-sided street too. We feel it a lot when we're young, but you also definitely feel it when you're old. Or older, I should say. I don't know if anyone feels the impulse to try and sculpt something out of clay from looking at this piece. If you want to do that, I know y'all didn't get an art kit this year, but it's pretty easy to come by an air dry clay at a Michael's. I actually think Walmart even sells an air dry clay, and it is exactly how it sounds. You make it and let it sit out in the air and it dries. It's a lot more brittle than other clay methods, but if you're not going to drink out of it or anything, it works fine. It receives paint pretty well too. It is a little bit chunkier in that, like, it's not as smooth as a traditional clay, so you have to work with it when it's pretty fresh, and when you add water to it, it doesn't necessarily help it either. It's fickle. Yeah. Great points, guys. I'm going to read them out for the people watching the video. It can help me to go further with my art and add beauty to tell or give a theme or story. Nice. We can't judge if someone is an artist just because they look younger or older. Very true. It makes me want to make clay figures. Nice. Good work, guys. So I think we have one more thought to leave you with. Okay. So you guys have power in your hands at this age. What is something that you can do to contribute to the art world or take from at your age? What is something that you can do now? Definitely. And I'm going to probably offer one of these opportunities up to people soon. So what's something that you think you can do now that you can't really do, and like that you can't really do when you're older? You guys do have some power now. And maybe you just don't know about it yet. So there's something that I'm going to talk about with everyone soon called Scholastic's Art and Writing Contest. So believe it or not, there's a huge industry out there on how to help encourage and pick rising artists. So there's actually a lot of contests around the country that exist to essentially encourage and give scholarships to students who want to pursue the arts and already show a lot of talent for it at a younger age. So the Scholastic's Art and Writing Contest is one of these, and they have regional submissions and then as well as national submissions. Yeah, you can use more imagination. You can definitely, there's more freedom to explore, I think, as a child than as adults. Adults really have to they have to learn about that freedom again. It's honestly literally taught out of them or adulted out of them. But there are a lot of contests out there for you guys and scholarships opportunities that only exist because you're young. So for example, if you weren't in high school, you couldn't apply for them. And I'm going to start sharing those opportunities soon. But what's something that you might have to wait on in the art world that you can't do yet because you're too young, or because the art world has this ageism side that says you're too young? In some ways, we can also work around it too, which is interesting. So I'm curious to see what you say and see if we can develop a workaround. Make full animated movies, owning your own studio. Very cool things. So you guys are both envisioning these kind of big projects, right? So having your own studio would probably be involving renting your space and teaching out. These days, what's a possible workaround you can do if you want to own your own studio and teach people how to do art? What's something you can do to do that without having to be older. Think about our technology now. When I was y'all's age, my first studio was in the kitchen, actually. My parents were generous and got me a cabinet to keep all my stuff in. And it had a sort of drop-down flap that I turned into a table, kind of like a desk, and I would work in there. So that was my first studio, which I wasn't allowed to work when they were cooking, which makes sense. And the same thing too, we can use our technology to make up for, you can use different apps to do this now with animated movies. You can collaborate with people like across the sea now in other countries that can help you out and make an animated movie. You can even take online courses to teach you specifically how to make the animated movie you want to make. We're entering an interesting age for sure. There's lots of theories on how college might change over the course of time, right? My friend actually works in the tech industry as well. She works with a digital company that's based in France but has a branch in Richmond, Virginia, which is really interesting. But she was saying, yeah, totally. You can even have a traveling studio if you want to Madison. You can set up and work in other people's spaces. I've seen some artists do it in public spaces as well, which is having people walk by and give them tips as they're working, which is an interesting thing. But we live in an age where we're really trying to figure out how to redesign college that it fits with our modern world, and how to redesign the school system so it fits with our modern world. And there's a big push for, actually, and you guys are going to see this once you get older too, a lot of companies, big tech industry companies, are hiring out kids after they graduate high school so that they'll come and essentially intern with them, and they'll go to college online or maybe to a local college nearby, but they're getting specific training from the company that they're working with to eventually have a full-time job. Now the reason for this is because technology moves so quickly that even in college, your most young, up-to-date teacher might be far behind. Right, Pixar does that too. And it's becoming a necessity because we're moving so fast now that, and literally my friend said that when they hire in certain people with degrees from college, while it's great they have the degree, they're so behind in terms of systems being changed, because they change every year and update every year. And the college team can't really keep up with it. They can just truly teach theory and best practices, but to actually provide for the company or the business or the studio, you need to be in the studio and work from there. So you guys are going to see that a lot as you get older. More opportunities the younger you are. Turn off the recording.